All right, everybody, welcome back to another live online learning webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we are looking at Media Composer and saving time with views and spotting. But before we head right into that, I'm going to go over a couple of points with all of you. So the first thing is that this webinar is being recorded. You'll notice that your audio is muted. However, you are able to ask us questions. If you're in the Zoom session with us, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. If you're joining us from a streaming platform like Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you can leave your questions in the comments. I'm going to be going through there and picking out questions to ask James, so please leave us your best questions. All of our recorded sessions will be posted to avid.com. And then again, if you're in the Zoom session, you're also able to raise your hand so that we can see you. So today with us, we have James Biddle. James has done a couple of sessions with us, so hopefully you're familiar with him. James is an Avid Master Instructor with us, so he actually teaches and certifies students. So James, whenever you're ready.
I am ready. I think so. Let's hope. Let's hope. Hi, everybody. How's it going? So today, what am I addressing? I'm going to address something fun, actually. And hopefully I'm going to share my screen here real soon. But the thing that I am going to address is the idea that a lot of people, when they create custom things, they create custom keyboards. And custom keyboards are great, but I never remember lots of keyboards. So I tend to work in workspaces and one keyboard. And I'm going to show you a trick because I use also a lot of different, I actually use a lot of different user profiles. And what a lot of people trying to do that with that is like, well, why would you do that? Why can't you just set one user? And I'm going to show you why and how it can actually definitely save you some time. Okay, so I'm going to go to my screen. And so usually when I do this, I do a big prep. I do a really big prep and get everything ready. I didn't do that today. I want to start afresh and deal with this idea of first creating a workspace. And last time, and I'll go over a little bit of it, the thing I addressed about a workspace is that you can link things to it. Okay, so I'm just going to create one here real quick where I'm going to create a really cool sort of video view. All right, I'm going to do the thing where I do Command K, crush that up. Okay, for those of you who might be familiar with the great Jeff Greenberg, I just made it smaller, Command L. I'm on a Mac. I promise I'm not alienating you PC users. I love you PC users. I wish I had a really fast, crazy PC, but I can't afford that. So the other thing I might do on here is show something like the film track. Okay, a lot of people like the film track, and I'm going to show the film track on this because I'm doing a lot of video. And then I'm going to say something in my like clip text that I like is I always like to have timeline clip notes. So I'm going to have a big space for that. I also like the fact that it jumps a lot of the things to the top. And then what I will do is I'm going to create a timeline view. I'll save as, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to say M time, my time. Okay. I use these little mnemonic devices because I need them. I'm quite a silly human being. And I may create a special composer view. So for that, I'm going to use the interesting trick. Some of you might not know it. When you're on a tool, I can do Command equal and go straight to a setting. Now, this one is not titled. And this is a nice feature in Avid now where they show you which custom setting are you on. So I'm going to go Shift Command equal. That's why it's easy to remember. Oopsie. I switched users and stuff a little bit earlier and it got a little goofy. Okay. It got a little goofy on me. I'm still working out the kinks of my new Mac. And sometimes when you switch users, this can happen, especially on mine. So I'm not going to blame Avid as much as I'm going to blame me. I'm really good at blaming me. And let's go working spaces, go back, and then we'll go in. Yep, there they are. Okay, I think it's something I'm doing wrong. I think it's a security issue. This is a new Mac for me, and it's very, very exciting. So I'm going to do Composer, highlight it, right click, make a duplicate, and on the checked one, I'm going to say M time. You're like, what? Trust me. Trust me. Cancel, please. Oh no, Avid has crashed. I have crashed my Avid. So if you are following along, I've done this. Trust me, this is something that I have done. It's going to come right back up. So if you're following along, what I want you to do is create some custom settings, but give them all the same name. Okay, give them all the same name. This is very important. Give them all the same name. If you attended the last session that I did, you know this is because what I'm about to do is link them to a workspace. I'm going to link them to a workspace. And you're like, okay. And that's the fun part, is linking them to the workspace. Now let me go and find that new thing that I created. And I'm going into anesthesia. And I'm going to click open. And hopefully go right back to where I was before. Yep. Thank you, Avid. You are the best. And so there we go. Go back into those settings. Okay. User, working spaces. I wonder if it did do the composer? No, because that's when I crashed it out. I'm a bad biddle. So M time. Cool. Let's double click it and open it. And a couple of things that I want in here that I love. I'm going to always display 2 rows of data because I love 2 rows of time. I love 2 rows of icons. Something that I also like under move, sometimes I like to set all of these so they ignore track selectors. It stops at markers, it stops at tail frames, and it stops at head frames when I just go to next event. See, go to previous next event, commands, do this. And sometimes I just love that. I absolutely just love it. And then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, this is great. And I'm going to create a new workspace. Now, the classic way to do that is go Windows, Workspaces, and then we'll do new workspace. One of the convenient new features is I can just come over to the Workspaces bar, click the little icon down at the bottom, do a new workspace, and I'm going to say that, call this mine. Okay, boom. Now I have a new workspace. What I can do with this workspace, which I showed last time, go to the settings, find it under the users, and let's go all the way down. And there it is, mine. Give it a double click, and I'm going to link it to specific settings. And I'm going to link it to M time. Anytime a setting has the word M time, it's going to lock into this workspace. So yes, on the audio workspace, I could have specific views and settings that always link to that workspace. I could have one for effects, color, or all these custom workspaces. The thing that's interesting about it is you can't have the same name as the workspace. So I can't have a workspace that's called audio. It won't do that. It doesn't like that. So give it a creative name. Now, this is why people say, why do you do this? Why do you do multiple workspaces? Well, one, it changes everything. So it'll change like the timeline view, the composer view, the bin view. It'll do this with each and every workspace, and it's just one click. With my keyboard, too many times when I change my keyboard settings all the time, it's like, I forget. Workspaces are visual to me. And then I just have to call them up this way. The other interesting thing, if you've never explored this, if you go to your command palette, there is a workspaces area, and you can make your workspaces hotkeys. And I've done this on one keyboard. I do it on one keyboard because if I do it on all these crazy other keyboards, I have to load them onto all of the keyboards. Some people love that, and more power to you. I can't handle it. Now, here's the thing that I want to show you. I just said I work in multiple user settings. Like every time I have a new project, I create a new user setting, or no, I say user profile. And people say, well, then you've got to recreate all your settings. Under Windows, there is a mysterious little thing called site settings. And if you open it up, it's blank. if I do the shift command equal, people say, well, yeah, there are site settings in here. I always assumed this had something to do with the site. And that's a great assumption. However, here's what it does. Under the user, I created this thing called mtime here, and I created this one keyboard called mine, and I got some workspaces and all that. I know that if I create a new user profile, that's all gone. And I'd have to do it all again. So that's why I have to use the same. On my Mac, what I do is this. I just created this thing called mtime, and I have a keyboard that I always use called mine. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to drag it to the site settings. I'm going to take the timeline view and drag it to the site settings. That's the one called mtime. I'm going to take one here, composer called mtime. I have a bin called safety. I have a bin setting called safety, and I always want that one. Boom. And then I have a custom workspace here called mine, splat. You're like, what does that do? Every single time I create a new user profile now, and I usually use the user profiles to keep track of clients and things like that. Every time I create a new user profile, all of these settings will be in that new user profile. And then they are right there in the new user profile. Or sometimes I have somebody working on my Mac, and they're working like an assistant, and they're working on my Mac, and I'm going to say, okay, you need to have these specific settings in a user profile. Just create a new one, and all the ones that I need you to have are in there. And it saves time. And usually I get a lot of people that do a lot of, they do a lot of keyboard and all that. And then they realize if they have one keyboard that they're really comfortable with, but they're constantly, it's like, okay, I need to work in a new area, and they change the workspace view. It's easier because then you get it. It's all visual. Boom, mine. I don't have any settings set up in the others, but if I had custom settings and edit, that view would change right there. And the composer view would change to what I need when I'm viewing in those areas. And when I create new user profiles, these settings will always end up in every new user profile I create. Here's another thing. I'm going to go back to the settings. Does it work for project settings? Yes, because I have a thing called media creation here, and I always want to make sure my media creation, I always do it so that it is, all three of these are locked out. Everything's to a certain, and what I do is I create a custom one and I drop it in there. Every time I create a new project, that gravitates to the settings. Okay. This is something we often train in the level 2. So if a lot of you were considering, getting a level 2 certification, these are the type of things that you would end up learning. But this is why I prefer using workspaces. It's easier for me to jump through the entire time. I always have my same keyboard, and it's very visual. And as an editor, I like to stay visual all the time. And my keyboard, yes, you can. And I have done this. Especially when I'm teaching. I will leave my keyboard up sometimes while I'm working. Here's mine. Believe me, there are some changes on it, even though it looks right. And notice that when you bring up settings now, it tells you which one. And I just sometimes leave it up. And occasionally when I'm just kind of crazy, I'll actually just click one of these on here and we'll activate down there. But this is why I like to create multiple workspaces. And then using this site settings option, I gravitate them in there. So every time I create a new user, it shows up in my new user profiles. Questions?
Nothing so far.
Well, that's really all I've got today. That is really all I've got. If you missed the session on timecode windows, would anybody like me to address timecode windows real quick? Because I think a lot of people didn't show up for that one, and they were probably busy.
I would like you to.
Okay, great. So timecode, not a problem. A lot of people don't. This was the one I did on, do you, I call it, I have 2 monitors, now what? And usually people don't know what to put in their second monitor. They're like, usually I have at Netflix. Well, what I suggest sometimes is either one of the following things is to dedicate it to the fact that, and I can even do this with sequences. Most people know that when they double click something, if it's a sequence, it's going to end up in the record monitor. I highly recommend, if you've never done an option click on sources or sequences, they break out into their own monitors. And that way you can have several sequences up at once in a second monitor, looking at all of them and deciding to cut them in. Same thing with sources. The other thing I do is I know that timecode burns, and these up here are really great, but in some cases, people don't like them. So there is a timecode window down here that can be duplicated. Okay. You can duplicate it. I'm going to give it a name. Call this one tracks. Or I wonder, how about if I call it M time? And now it is stuck on that. It's going to be associated with that workspace, which I like. I'm going to give it a double click. Am I going to blow up Avid again? Am I going to blow it up? Oh, it might be behind this. Let me check. Well, it's going to be somewhere. Hang on. Oh, way to go, dummy. No, that's one of those rare ones. You double click it wanting to change it, and what you do is you actually change the tool. It's been a long day already for me. Sorry. We've got hurricane style rains coming here. We're not in the direct path of it, but it's getting weird. So you will notice we have a big time code window here. This is usually my second screen. And what I can do is I can change the size, make it really big. I usually do this because somebody I'm working with, like a director, they really don't want to see this. They want to be looking at the main viewer. Here I can go to source and say in V1, okay. There's that clip. And if I'm one of these people, I can add a line and say, nope, not the duration. Let's go with what's in V1, and I want its source time code. And then maybe just to be enterprising, I will add another line. And on that, I will go ahead and just put the source audio and its claim name. And then as I scroll through, it changes. And I can put that and have a big version of that on a second window. And this would always be associated with possibly a workflow view that has to deal with watching dailies or making notes or doing sound notes. And then all I have to do is flip from each individual workspace, and it will change the time code window. It will change my timeline views. It will change everything. And then I'm just, the only thing that remains constant for me is my keyboard setting. That's the one that I never change because I'm just so used to it. I don't like changing it. But with each separate view, yes, I can get different sort of icons on all the different areas. So that's why for me, if I'm doing spotting or I need to do things quickly, I create many different workspaces that I can jump through. And in many cases, they're all mapped to my keyboard. And I can just say, okay, let's take a look at this view. Let's take a look at this one. Let's take a look at this one. And it all goes to exactly what I need at the right moment. So that's a little helpful tip. And moving those things to the site settings, every time I create a new user, I want certain settings to always gravitate to the user profile and to always gravitate to a new project. And by loading them in that site settings tool, that's exactly what will happen. Every time I create a new one, I always have a standard amount of settings that always go in there. And it makes doing new settings much more, I enjoy it more because it's like I always have my standard things in there, and then I can create new things specific to the project. I don't have to rebuild everything. And that usually saves me a lot of time and helps me out quite a bit.
Amazing. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any questions. So I'm going to steal the screen sharing from you. I'm just going to go over some of our upcoming sessions for those who are interested. So this concludes our sessions for the week, but we are running 3 more next week. So we have a Pro Tools session on the 22nd. We have a Maestro Designers session on the 23rd, and then we have a Media Composer session again on the 24th. So if you're looking to learn more about Media Composer, then you would want to join us a week from today. And with that, that concludes today's session. Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate you stopping by.
Appreciate you guys.
We will see you all next